Hello and welcome to the channel. Flame of Rebirth here to give you your weekly dose of the best Bleach content in the business right now. We began our journey peering into the 1,000-year blood war in Yuha's first invasion. As I explained in the last video, Kubo uses the first phase to establish the legendary status that Ichigo has attained, and after successfully pushing back the enemy, it is time for the Soul Society to lick its wounds and regroup for the second invasion. During this time, Kubo gives all the characters some much needed attention as preparations ensue for the battle to come. As you will come to understand after watching this video, Kubo takes Ichigo into what is to me the final major deconstruction narrative of Bleach's story. Kubo sends Ichigo into the essence of his very soul, and Ichigo arrives at the crossroads of his destiny. This is chapter 7 of the Ichigo series on this channel. Ichigo finally ascends. Before we begin, if you enjoy this content, please be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, and most of all, subscribe for more. This is the road to 20k and I want to keep the hype going. Without any further delay, class is in session. Kibology 101. Let's do it. So we pick things up after Yuha and the Quincy retreat. The members of Squad 4 are running all over the place trying to deliver first aid to the wounded. While others are getting treated, Ichigo speaks to Akon, who confirms that Kisuke and the others in Waikumunda are all okay. As Ichigo is talking to him, he hears Ikkaku angrily screaming at someone because he just got the news that Kenpachi lost in battle. Ichigo is visibly sad to hear this because he knows how important Kenpachi's strength is to the members of Squad 11, especially Ikkaku. Hinataro tries to heal Ichigo personally, but of course, Ichigo refuses, telling him to focus on those who are in dire situations. Shinji approaches Ichigo with news about Renji and Rukia's operations. The good news is that they're alive, but they're in pretty bad shape. After Ichigo gets the update from the doctor, he tries to leave when Rukia opens her eyes and calls out to him. The two of them have some nice banter that warmed my heart to see. Ichigo and Rukia make for very entertaining interactions all the time. She asks Ichigo if he came to Soul Society to protect them and thanks him for it. And as you can see, Ichigo accepts this burden, like I've been trying to get across so far. Shinji drills the point even further by explaining that Ichigo chased the enemy away and that his presence saved a lot of lives. He tells Ichigo to have more pride in himself, and while he's not wrong to say this, it's just not Ichigo's style of living. He won't take pride or credit for something like that. In any case, Ichigo leaves to speak with Mayuri about his broken Bankai. After he leaves, Rukia and Shinji have a short conversation about Ichigo. Shinji makes a point that Ichigo is off worrying about everyone else even while injured, and Rukia asks why Ichigo has a pained look on his face. Shinji's perspective on this is that Ichigo had a tough time getting through this battle, so he's worn out and tired. Shinji's opinion here is a fairly good guess, but you can tell how much more Rukia understands Ichigo compared to Shinji. She sees right through the act and knows that there is something more. Ichigo is hiding something much more serious and trying to bear to learn so as to not bother anyone. Place a mental note right there. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. We see Ichigo in Mayuri's lab discussing his broken Bankai, and the conclusion right now is that a destroyed Bankai can never be restored to its original form. Mayuri gives examples to back up his claim, but I don't want to go into the specifics of that. The point is, Ichigo now has a broken Bankai. As they're talking, Mayuri gets word that Squad 0 is about to arrive, and he and Ichigo rendezvous with the other captains to meet them. We get a short explanation about Squad 0 here. The Zero Division is tasked with protecting the Soul King's palace, which exists in a dimension of its own, high above the Serite. Shinsui actually gives us a piece of neat information here. He explains that the walls that surround the Serite, when Ichigo attacked during the Soul Society arc, acts as a defensive mechanism to shield the Serite, but they are only enacted during emergencies. When there is no emergency, they exist where they're supposed to be, in the royal palace above. This is consistent with Bleach lore. When Ichigo actually attacked all those years ago, the walls just dropped from the sky, from out of nowhere. Apparently, these walls fall from the palace above. Anyway, the Zero Division arrive, and what Kubo does with the Zero Division is what I like to call doing an Oda. You know how in One Piece, Oda will come up with these funny looking characters who don't look all that threatening, but in actuality are strong as f***? Kubo does that here with the Zero Division. They all look like a bunch of misfits, but they are indeed the task force designed to protect Soul Society's most vital asset. They mess around for a little bit and grab Byakuya, Renji, and Rukia. The final person they wish to take with them is in fact Ichigo Kurosaki. Obviously, Ichigo refuses. He feels he's not that wounded and still has things he needs to take care of. Ichigo is pleading his case when Urahara places a call from Wakamundo, telling Ichigo that Chad and Orihime are doing just fine. Kisuke tells Ichigo to take action for his own sake. Think carefully and decide for yourself what it is you truly want to do. I like this gesture from Kisuke because not only is he putting Ichigo's worries at ease, he is relinquishing Ichigo of any responsibility. The way Kisuke is speaking, he realizes that by saying what he said, Ichigo could realistically leave Soul Society and no one would blame him for it. But of course, he, Chad, and everyone around him knows damn well what Ichigo will do. Ichigo decides to head to the Soul King's palace. To get there, what do you know? They go visit Kukakushibo. After some nice pleasantries, Ichigo and the rest of the Zero Division heads to the Soul King's palace. At this juncture, Ichigo is sent through 3 phases of recovery to prepare for the battle that is to come. The first is Kirinji's hot springs. Ichigo hangs out in the hot springs with Kirinji and they're literally just vibing. Rukia is floating in the water face down and her butt is in the air, which, thank you Kubo. In any case, the important thing to take note of here is Ichigo's attitude. He's not depressed, and quite frankly, aside from that one scene in the rain where Rukia was worried about him, he's been the normal Ichigo you'd expect. There's a lot of fun Bleach lore in this scene, but I'll have to save that for a later video. This video is focusing solely on Ichigo. Kirinji punches Ichigo in the face as a test to see if he's fully recovered, and as it is later revealed, not only did Ichigo tank the hit, he reflexively reacted and countered his punch, injuring his fist. He was also fully naked in the hot springs, even though Kirinji's helpers had to wear a ton of protective gear in order not to burn to death. My full-ring Bankai Ichigo's agenda is thriving the more I read, because even though Ichigo's Bankai is broken, he has not lost the ability to perform Bankai. His Bankai transformation has not ended either. He just has a broken Bankai blade. So quite frankly, all this time, Ichigo has remained in his Bankai state, and in this state, he tanks and counters a punch from a Squad Zero member who was known for his speed. Now that's my boy right there. He's got that dog in him. Anyway, from there, Ichigo and Renji, who joined him after recovering, head over to the next palace. The cool thing about Kubo's approach to the royal palace is that he's making everything very comical and jovial. In order for them to go from one palace to the other, they have to literally be launched into the next palace. Ichigo and Renji, who joined him after the hot springs, arrive at Kiryu Hikifune's palace. Here, Renji and Ichigo eat to their heart's content to regain their strength and power. Hikifune cooks up a beautiful string of delicacies and they indulge to their heart's content. As Ichigo eats, he pauses for a second and asks Renji a question. Do you think it's okay for us to be sitting around doing this? And the reason I point this out is because Kubo doesn't give a lot of Renji/Ichigo moments in the show. We know they're great friends who would risk their lives for each other, but there's not a lot of moments where they just level with each other on a friendship basis. Here, we get to see a little bit of it, and I enjoyed it. There's a lot more interesting Bleach lore hidden here that I will make a separate video on, but for now, I do only want to focus on Ichigo. After eating some more, Renji and Ichigo have recovered and they are ready to head towards the next palace, Nimaya Uetsu, the man who created the Zanpakuto. Once they arrive at Nimaya's palace, Renji and Ichigo are hit with blinding lights resembling somewhat of an introduction to a rock show or something. Nimaya bursts through the smoke, much to the chagrin of Renji and Ichigo. There's a ton of messing around between Nimaya and his new guest, which to me is just Kubo having fun with his work. It's a definite tone shift from what was just occurring in the Sarete down below, but it works. Nimaya leads the two Soul Reapers to a house at the edge of a cliff. They walk inside and fall down into a dark pit. Nimaya then summons Renji and Ichigo's Zanpakuto and shatters them, lamenting that their swords are incredibly fragile. As Renji and Ichigo stare up at him, they sense a presence behind them and turn around to witness these shadow figures that Nimaya calls asauchi. They are the ultimate Zanpakuto with the potential to become just about anything. Renji and Ichigo's task now is to force the asauchi into submission. The asauchi, according to Nimaya, are upset about how Ichigo and Renji use their Zanpakuto. Whether you see them as tools, treat them as subordinates, relied on them as partners, as family, friends, role models, students, pets, lovers, sweethearts, that is not the key to understanding the Zanpakuto. And so he intends to teach Renji and Ichigo the truth, starting from a simple question. Which is superior, the Zanpakuto or the shinigami? After 71 hours and 48 minutes, roughly 3 days and 3 nights, Renji and Ichigo's battle with the asauchi is over. Renji Obara passes the test. He successfully forced the asauchi into submission. On the other hand, Ichigo Kurosaki fails to submit the asauchi, and due to that, Nimaya will not reforge his Zanpakuto. According to Nimaya's own words, the asauchi did not choose you. This is over. The end. Nimaya tells Ichigo to go home and to never come back. Soul Society is a place for shinigami. Mere humans who don't even have a Zanpakuto have no right to set foot in there. Ichigo is obviously not willing to leave without putting up some kind of fight. He lunges at Nimaya, who fires a Reishi restriction at Ichigo and opens a portal that teleports Ichigo out of the Soul King's palace. After Ichigo is gone, Kubo has Nimaya give us some important context about the situation. He believes that Ichigo doesn't quite understand what it means that the asauchi did not choose you. Ichigo has been fighting for himself all this time without even wielding an asauchi. You need to take a few steps back to your roots. You need to learn who you really are and where you came from, even if it's a trip you won't ever come back from. Ichigo is left standing outside his home with the rain pouring down. Isshin's about to open the door when Ichigo runs away to Misikumi's place. Misukumi has become a refuge for Ichigo when things are going hard for him. Misukumi makes a joke about being an older sister to Ichigo, and maybe that's what Kubo wanted it to be. But for me, Misukumi already having a son always made me feel like she was a mother figure to Ichigo, not an older sister. But I guess it works either way. But now that we've reached this point, I have to take a step back and contextualize everything that has happened. Let's go back to just after Yor and the Quincy's left. Ichigo was dealing with two major issues. The first was his broken Zanpakuto, and the second was Yuha's comments about his mother. When he went to see Rukia, he tried to remain upbeat and most people bought the act he was putting on. Most people, except Rukia, who immediately noticed that Ichigo was carrying a burden. Now, if you've been following the series, you know about my Kubology ideology of deconstruction. It is the writing technique where the writer breaks down a character and exposes his weakness to have him overcome it and ascend to a new level. In the past, Ichigo has undergone two major deconstructive cycles. The first was at the beginning of the Arankar arc when White was beginning to take over his mind. The second was during the Fullbring arc when he lost his powers, both at the start and at the end of the arc. And I want to draw your attention to two major differences in the way Kubo writes Ichigo now versus then. You will find that in the past, when Ichigo is depressed and suffering internally, he will do one of, if not both of these things. A. He will recoil into his shell and withdraw from the outside world. Or B. He will refuse to talk to anyone about it. These are Ichigo's main reactions when he's met with major internal struggle. But when you look at what Ichigo does in the final arc compared to what he did previously, you notice that Ichigo is actually changing. Allow me to show you what I mean. So, his Bankai is broken. Super big deal. Major issue. In addition to that, the enemy called you his son and name-dropped your mother. You'd expect Ichigo to recoil into his shell and not talk to anyone, but in reality, Ichigo just keeps doing what he always does. Observe. When speaking to Mayuri, he looks normal. When the Royal Guard go and see Kukaku, Ichigo's talking the same way he always does. Through his entire journey in the Royal Palace, Ichigo is just the Ichigo we know. Before, he'd run to his room, he would refuse to hang out with his friends, and he would brush everyone off. But now, he seems to have realized that there are things you can control and things you cannot. Work with me here because I think it's important to apply to your own individual lives. In your opinion, what do you believe is Ichigo's best course of action to repair a broken Bankai and attain answers about his mother? Well, in my humble opinion, looking at the situation as it exists right now, the only two people who can really give Ichigo an answer concerning his mother are Kisuke and Isshin, his father. Those are the only two who know the truth. Where are they? Kisuke is in Wakamundo conducting extremely important research on the Hollows and how they steal Bankai, and his father is back home taking care of his two sisters. Okay, cool. Could Ichigo leave Soul Society right now and go speak to his father? Yes, he could. The same way he could have left Soul Society and head over to Wakamundo to confirm that Chad and Orihime are okay, but he decided to stay because there were more important matters. The Royal Guard are not going to wait for you to go back home, talk to your dad, and then come back to us. In fact, after this point in the series, the Royal Guard do not set foot in the Serete again for the rest of the show. On the other hand, he has a broken Bankai, and the only ones who are capable of repairing it are standing right in front of you, saying, "Come with us. We will fix your Bankai." What do? The answer to me is obvious. You leave with the Royal Guard and you work on what you can control. That is the lesson I wish for you to take from this. In life, there are two types of problems. Problems you can control, and problems you cannot. If you want to spend time worrying about circumstances you cannot control, I can't stop you. But I'll tell you this much. No amount of worry ever fixed an uncontrollable circumstance. You ever been in a situation where you're eagerly awaiting a test result? Whether it's a medical thing or a school thing? The idea is very clear. You get your results in 3 days. Does waiting harder make the world go faster? Does it influence what the answer will be? No, it doesn't. Instead, you're better served working hard on the circumstances you can control, and that is all Ichigo is doing here. No point in crying over spilt milk. I gotta fix my Bankai right now. Let's do that. So he does all of that, but he fails at that as well. The asauchi do not acknowledge him and he's sent away from the Royal Palace. What does Ichigo do in this scenario? Does he recoil into his shell? I guess you could make an argument for that, but more importantly, Ichigo goes to see Misakumi and accepts her offer. He takes a shower, he eats some food, and he's just happy to have someone to rely on. That counts as progress in my eyes. He does not leave to go be alone in a corner. He takes refuge with someone he knows he can run to anytime he needs help. That is why I love Ikumi's character. She's become Ichigo's rock in so many ways. But in any case, being with Ikumi doesn't necessarily fix the problem he has right now. That responsibility falls to Isshin, who comes to get Ichigo. I still maintain that this is still progress and development on Ichigo's part, because in the past, people have tried to talk to Ichigo about his problems, and he would always run away from the confrontation. It's happened on multiple occasions in the series. But here, he sees Isshin standing before him. Isshin doesn't say a word. He just looks at him as a silent offer that says, "I want to talk with you." Ichigo doesn't run away from his father. He does not remain inside his shell. He meets Isshin halfway and leaves with him. This is another lesson I want you all to take from this. Like previously mentioned, there are problems that can be controlled and problems that cannot be controlled. Oftentimes, the key to solving a problem lies in help coming from outside yourself. Someone has to come with you with the answer, or at the very least, the key to allowing you to find the answer. When they do, their ability to help you is limited and dependent on your ability to receive the help. A person can reach out a hand, but if you do not reach out in return, there is no connection. That is why I still value what Ichigo does here. It is very obvious that Isshin has come with a resolution for Ichigo, but Ichigo has to want to receive said resolution for any actual progress to be made. Luckily for me in my Ichigo agenda, he accepts and they have a conversation. If you were excited for my narration of the Everything But the Rain arc, I do have to apologize. I'm not going to break it down simply because I've done it already. Look in the top right corner of the screen and you will see a video about White Ichigo. I go into great detail in that video and it will give you all the information you need. Circling back to the latter part of the story, exactly 9 years ago on June 17th, Misaki Kurosaki was killed at the hands of Grand Fisher. The true reason Misaki died is because Yuha Bach performed an ability called Ashvalen, the Holy Selection. As Isshin explains, Misaki wasn't supposed to die that night. He was at home and he sensed Grand Fisher's Ryotsu. He would have gone over there if he thought something was actually wrong. The reason he did not do anything is because he was confident in Misaki's abilities. She was a pure Quincy who had access to a Quincy armory and the Blute ability. So in reality, Grand Fisher would have been no problem for a Quincy of Misaki's status. The real reason she lost is because of Yuha Bach. By stripping her of her powers, she was left vulnerable and that is why she died. Furthermore, Isshin tells Ichigo that Yuha Bach is the forefather of the Quincy. He founded the Quincy tradition and for that reason, his blood runs through the veins of all Quincy. All of Ichigo's encounters with the Quincy begin to take on a new meaning and the phrase, "my precious son, born in the dark," has new meaning. It was raining throughout Ichigo's conversation with Isshin and by the end of their talk, the sun begins to rise and the rain begins to stop. Ichigo looks Isshin in the eyes and says, "Thank you." Nothing more, just a genuine thank you. And you can see Isshin look into his son's eyes and you can tell the pride he feels. And as I'm sitting here writing this, I'm hesitant to make this tangent, but I'm gonna believe that you all will care enough about this to listen, because this moment matters to me. It does, and I'll explain why. Isshin is a single father. He lost his better half many years ago and is left to raise 3 kids on his own. He did not remarry, he did not get a nanny or some weird helper. No, he did it all himself for the last 9 freaking years. I have limited knowledge in the experience of being a single parent. After all, I'm just some 24-year-old who's only beginning to understand the truths of the world. But I will say this, it can't have been easy. It must have been extremely difficult to raise 2 daughters and 1 son by himself. He must have had doubts about his ability to raise kids the way his wife would have wanted to, and to Ichigo especially. I can't imagine how he as a father felt, knowing the depths of power that rested on his shoulders. His firstborn son is a Quincy, a human, a Fullbringer, a Shinigami, and a Hollow. Like, dude, you know what that means for a person? A character with 5 origins means 5 possible reasons for him to be confused about who he is and who he wants to be. and he must have been worried about making sure he raised his son the right way. And so to see Ichigo now, 17 years old, stand in front of him, having been told the truth about his mother, look him dead in the eyes and say, "Dad, thank you." People berate Kubo for not having backgrounds or not having texts and blah blah blah. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Look at the lore and character specific details you can draw out of one panel where one person says thank you and the other just looks at him. I don't need to be told how Isshin feels because it's right there on his face. Look into his eyes. That is the image of a father who is proud. That is the image of a father who is happy that he raised his son the right way. And that warms my heart. It truly does. What you might say with 1,000 words, Kubo shows you with a picture. Ichigo leaves his home and he's immediately transported back to Nemaya's estate by one of his subordinates. Nemaya used an ability that had a time limit for a return. If Ichigo was not able to figure out an answer in one night, he would not have figured it out ever. Now, I don't believe that, but I guess Nemaya understood how dire the situation was. There was no time to lose. Ichigo was sent back into the pit with the asauchi and tasked with dominating them, or at the very least, having them acknowledge him. As he stands there, Nemaya instantly witnesses every single asauchi in the pit bow their head in submission to Ichigo Kurosaki. Every single one. Ichigo walks among them and arrives at an asauchi that has its head bowed. He reaches out his hand and it reaches out towards him. The moment they make contact, the black asauchi turns white and Ichigo simply says, "It's you." The asauchi's face is revealed to be resembling that of a hollow, specifically white Ichigo. But, we'll deal with that in just a moment. Nemaya asks Ichigo to come with him. He will personally reforge Ichigo's blade. Nemaya summons the asauchi and turns it into a white substance. One of Nemaya's subordinates burns it with a fire blast. The next helper pours a ton of water onto it. Another girl uses her bangs to straighten out the substance and she throws it into the air. Yet another girl takes out a piece of her teeth, turns it into a hammer, and hands the hammer to Nemaya, who ties his hair and takes off his glasses. It's time to get down to business. Nemaya begins to hammer away, striking the blade with both hands, and with each strike, heat pours out of it. Ichigo stands silently, just watching. Nemaya asks what Ichigo is thinking, and Ichigo explains that he's wondering why Nemaya took his shades off. Nemaya explains that he takes off his shades so he can see the color of the flames. He draws Ichigo's attention to the fact that when the asauchi touched Ichigo, it turned white, just like his inner hollow. As he continues, he reveals that Ichigo's hollow is his real zanpakuto. Aizen created white by using the souls of many shinigami, and ironically enough, that is how Nemaya's asauchi are created. The hollow went on to enter Ichigo's soul, where it fused with his own natural shinigami powers and became his zanpakuto, which would then mean that the man who has been masquerading as his zanpakuto all this time has been an imposter. Ichigo is immediately transported to his inner world, and right here, these next 2 chapters or so of Bleach are quite literally the best moment in the entirety of Bleach. Allow me to explain why, because it is truly beautiful, and it is for moments like these why I defend and spread the message and teachings of Cubology. When Ichigo arrives in his inner world, he's standing on the side of a skyscraper reaching towards the heavens. There are clouds and it's sunny. It's what you'd expect from Ichigo's inner world. The moment he lays eyes on Zangetsu, he realizes his odd similarity to Yuha Bak, who he just faced. As it turns out, Old Man Zangetsu is the embodiment of the Quincy powers inside him, and his visage is that of Yuha Bak from 1,000 years ago. Ichigo then begins to think back. I was always trying not to think about it. Back then, when I faced him for the first time, I felt still I had been drawn there by something. Why, when I first set eyes on him, did I find myself remembering someone else? Kubo shows you the pain in Ichigo's eyes, and immediately, a torrent of rain pours down from the skies above. The two stand in the rain, with rain falling on this desolate world they both occupy. Ichigo stares on in horror as Old Man Zangetsu says, "I am not Zangetsu." The moment Ichigo hears those words, the skyscrapers they are standing on cracks and breaks into pieces, tumbling down into the waters below. If you're a student of Cubology, you know that when Ichigo's emotional state is compromised, it manifests as dark skies, rain, and a skyscraper's crumbling. All 3 have happened, and both of them are now submerged in water. Ichigo presses the old man for answers, and he reveals that not only is he not zangetsu, he always used white to teach him any techniques he needed to learn. In addition to that, when Ichigo's life was in danger, the one who came to his aid was always his hollow. Old Man Zangetsu did not want Ichigo to become a Soul Reaper because he did not want Ichigo to get hurt. Seeking battle would inevitably lead him to more powerful opponents who would hurt him even more. In order to prevent that, he suppressed Ichigo's hollow and became the center of his spirit energy. But along the way, seeing Ichigo try so hard to grow as a shinigami and a person, he began to root for Ichigo. He began to believe in his potential, and soon, he found himself wanting Ichigo to succeed. He now finds himself feeling a kind of happiness that the time has come for him to step aside. He gives Ichigo his final words. "You have become strong, and I have had the pleasure of standing by your side all this time, watching you grow. What greater happiness can there be? I am satisfied." As he fades away, you can see tears fall from his eyes as a reishi blade is left behind. Old Man Zangetsu tells Ichigo to take hold of the true zangetsu, and as Ichigo grabs it, he's enveloped by a blinding light. Ichigo is left floating in the waters as he sinks to the bottom. As he's sinking, Kira takes us into Ichigo's mind. "You're right, there were no lies. In his words, or in yours. You used your Quincy shadow to help me when I needed it. You used your Quincy blood to stop my blood from flowing freely. You lent me your Quincy power to let me win when I wasn't strong enough. It doesn't matter to me who you are, and you'd probably tell me that I'm wrong. But both you and him, I believe that both of you are zangetsu." Ichigo then stands upright and heads towards the surface. As he's rising, a light remains at the top and he asks, "Don't you think that's okay, zangetsu?" Ichigo then hurls his hand into the fire and grabs hold of the blade. Ichigo pours his soul into the blade and Nimaya asks him to draw it out. Ichigo uses both hands and draws out the blade. Immediately, the ocean of water that existed to cool down the blade instantly evaporates, as the dust and smoke begins to clear. Everyone around lays eyes on Ichigo Kurosaki, standing upright with understanding in his heart and confidence in his eyes, wielding two zangetsu blades. Ichigo takes a look at the blades and senses his two partners standing beside him, silent, but still more present than if they spoke. This moment right here is the most important moment in the entirety of the Bleach manga. Ichigo begins to slowly close his eyes as he thinks to himself, "I won't ask you to lend me your powers anymore, and I won't tell you don't get in my way. I won't even say let us fight together. I will fight for myself, because you are me. The blade is me." How can I begin to unpack the layers of storytelling this one line is drenched and engorged in? It's going to be a tall task, but I want you all to understand this as well as I do, so please humor me for a moment. It's going to seem like a tangent, but I promise to tie it all together properly. In the world of Bleach, the main method of combat for the Soul Reapers is the Zanpakuto. It is the way they are able to protect that which is due to them. For that reason, it makes sense to assume that if you wish to be a stronger shinigami, the best path to achieving that goal is to master your Zanpakuto. That poses a new question. What does it mean for one to master their Zanpakuto? If the key to becoming stronger as a shinigami is mastering your Zanpakuto, how does one do this? When you peer through the annals of Bleach, you find that the answer to this question is scattered throughout the story, but each piece leads you to this one conclusion. The closer you are to your Zanpakuto, the stronger you will be as a Soul Reaper. The key component to Zanpakuto mastery is synergy and connection with your Zanpakuto. It is for this reason that in the world of Bleach, the older you are as a shinigami, the stronger you most likely are. Yamamoto, Shunsui, Gitake, Nimaya, Ichibe, and so on. Because they have lived for so long, they have had a larger amount of time to connect, bond with, and synergize with their Zanpakuto. But then you arrive at Nimaya Uetsu, the creator of the Zanpakuto, and he throws a curveball into this logic. Nimaya asks the question. He wants to know what Renji and Ichigo think the true relationship between the Soul Reaper and Zanpakuto should be. Friends? Allies? Masters? Tools? Equals? He says no, that's not the answer. That is not the true relationship between Soul Reaper and Zanpakuto. So follow me on this. The goal is to gain mastery over the Zanpakuto, and the way to do that is to synergize and connect with it on a specific level. However, the type of relationship isn't that of companions, equals, or friends. It's something else. And using Ichigo, Kubo shows us what the true relationship between sword and wielder is. In chapter 541, Kubo titles the chapter The Blade and Me. This title signifies the perceived relationship between Shinigami and Zanpakuto. There is me and there is my power. I must converse with my power. I must understand it, resonate with it, and embrace it. The two of us must become close, and if we operate that way, we will become stronger. Then Ichigo comes along. He learns Zangetsu's name and he naively thinks that he has everything under control. He then realizes that he needed to do more than just ask him for his name. Not only that, the person he wished to destroy, the person he hated outwardly, was the one to whom he needed to bond with the entire time. He now learns that the person he trusted lied to him the entire time, and the one he hated was the one protecting him from the shadows. This synergy within his soul is cracked and fractured. In these moments, there is no Zanpakuto mastery, only chaos within. But after the heart-to-heart exchange, after the truths are revealed, and after all is said and done, Ichigo is left at a crossroad. A crossroad where he must decide how he wishes to relate to his sword. The first thing he does is settle the identities of each person. What do I mean by this? Well, he has to decide who Zangetsu is. And if the other person isn't Zangetsu, what are you going to call him? How will you relate to him? He's got some choices to make. Ichigo decides that Old Man Zangetsu and White are both Zangetsu. In fact, I believe that because the asauchi can become anything, and because Nehemiah asked Ichigo to place his hand into the inferno and pour his soul into the blade, I genuinely believe that Ichigo's admission of both White and Old Man Zangetsu being Zangetsu is what spawned him having two blades. The Zanpakuto Shikai release of most Shinigami reflect the character, personality, and temperament of the wielder. It's been that way from the get-go. When the blade was initially being forged, it was one blade, but after Ichigo pours his energy into it, it becomes two. I think that had everything to do with Ichigo wanting to wield both of them, because he saw both of them as his Zanpakuto. Ichigo reconciles the differences he has had with both entities. He finally accepts White, declaring that White Ichigo never lied to him. Not even once. He thanked both of them for helping him when he could not help himself, and his final admission nails home Kubo's message. I won't ask you to lend me your strength anymore, and I won't ask you to get out of my way anymore. From here on out, I will fight for myself, because you are me. The blade is me. Zanpakuto mastery is not about two separate entities who wish to understand each other. It is not two different beings trying to connect with each other. It is not a master to student, tool to wielder, brother to brother, or friend to friend. No. The true relationship between a blade and a shinigami is that you and him are one. The blade and the shinigami are one. There is no greater relationship than one that says, I now know so much about you. I now understand you to such a high extent that I don't have to ask you for help. I don't have to ask us to fight together. No. I don't have to ask you what you want and check with you to see if you agree. No, none of that. I can fight by myself and for myself because you and I are one. My beliefs are yours and your beliefs are mine. My thoughts and feelings are yours and your thoughts and feelings are mine. Logic, reason, instinct, Quincy, Shinigami, hollow, worthless and unnecessary. You are to me simply Zangetsu, and I to you am simply Ichigo. I am a firm believer that stories are not merely fictional narratives that we follow. There must be some takeaway that those who read can use in their own lives. Ichigo Kurosaki stands as proof that togetherness in the world and within ourselves can be attained. Ichigo is a walking contradiction, a soul that is filled with opposing forces at every turn. He shouldn't have balance and he shouldn't have achieved this level of peace, but he does. By understanding each component of his power pool, Ichigo is able to reconcile everything and everyone within himself. And using that template, seeks to fight to defend a world where Soiper, Quincy, Arrancar, and humans can fight side by side to create a better world for everyone. What may have been the hollow for Ichigo in the past may be a weakness for you in some area, perhaps some trauma from years past or relationships long gone. Everyone walks this life carrying their own versions of a cross. Everyone walks carrying some burden upon their shoulders, and we all move forward in the hopes that someday we can reconcile all the worn parts within ourselves and become happy. Ichigo is an example to us all in that the trauma of our past does not have to define us. Ichigo is proof to us all that it is human to feel fear. It is human to feel pain, anger, and sadness. To step back into your shell when things seem grim makes you human. But in that same story, in that same journey, Kubo uses Ichigo to send you all a clear message. The key to rising above your trauma does exist. It may come to you in many different forms, but it does exist. For some, it is the reliance in a deity. For others, it is a greater understanding of their psychological states. For others, it is the completion of their ultimate goal in life. The same way each Shinigami Zanpakuto is different and unique, the paths to our ultimate destination may be different, but it is imperative that you keep moving forward. It is vital that you seek help from those who reach out their hand to aid you, friends, family, and everything in between. It is important to face the fears that plague us and take it all one step at a time. And I guarantee you that at the end of the road, the mistakes and faults that held you down will become the reason you are the strong, reliable, joyful person you end up becoming. And that path will be the reason you can then reach out outside yourself and help others so that one step at a time, we as a collective people can move forward. This is your boy Rebirth. It's been great. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week for chapter 8 of this 9-chapter series. This is the road to 20K. Let's get it.